Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest CADS Chat number 12. We've reached to the dozen. Tonight is a special night. It is transfer window closing evening. And we've got, 2 hours left in this thing. Going to be interesting. Not a lot seems to be happening. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to quickly talk about the football matches we've played recently since we last talked. We'll have a chat about some players, maybe, and we've got some questions we want to address as well. I know Matt's got one. I know Ash has got one as well, which I think do need to be discussed. So let's get on to that and see how we go. How is everyone feeling after the first few games under Big Ange's tutelage?
I was all right until Tuesday. And I was so fucked off on Tuesday. Just the way we played, making 9 changes. I thought we were going to commit to cups, and I have to say I was pretty pissed off.
Yeah, let's just turn back time.
I thought they played well in the second half, but it just seemed that we weren't committing to that competition.
Turn back time and to before the Fulham game, and everyone was riding high. We should have had our podcast then. This is a mistake. No, I totally agree. I mean, we can. I mean, I have a bit of a rant brewing about that, but I'll save it. But yeah, the short version is, yeah, I'm really disappointed with the League Cup game.
And are you disappointed with Ange or the response by the players?
Ange.
Yeah,
interesting. I was more disappointed in the players because a lot of those players played good minutes in pre-season and put in some good performances. But as soon as it actually came to a crunch match, a match that actually meant something, some points or progression into the next round, they just got back into bad habits, I felt. There was a lot of aimless punting, a lot of players not actually trying to pass the ball and put in those patterns of play that have worked so well for us. And we've seen and been so excited by, or I've certainly been excited by in these first few games of the season.
But the reason why I don't think it's a fair comparison is that this was a almost completely second 11 team, right? And you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, Van der Ven is new, so he clearly needed some minutes. Richarlison needs the minutes clearly to find some form. So those two choices were kind of a given. And then everything else, it was just like second 11, and you can't do that. This is not how to rotate a team if you want to take the game seriously. Well, there's specifically what I was annoyed with Ange about, and I'm really sad to be saying this, but what he said was disingenuous, and I thought that he was a straight talker, but he said we're gonna try and win every game, and this is not what trying to win every game looks like. And the fact is that afterwards he said, how am I supposed to get to know my squad if I don't try them out? Okay, so you weren't trying to win the game, were you? What was the priority? Winning or testing players out? You can't have it both ways, Ange. And that's what he did. I obviously it's a learning curve for him as well. And this is we can all make mistakes, but I thought this was a pretty big one. I think also he pretty badly misread the Spurs support. If someone should have told him that would go down like a lead balloon among the support. I mean, it's easy to say in retrospect, having seen the result. Maybe he was banking on being considered a miracle worker. But we've all seen this so many times, and we don't have any patience for it.
Well said, Matt. Well said.
I see. If we're going to talk about the fans, I was really disappointed to hear the Levy out chants during the game. I thought they were, I thought the plan was that they were going to keep those chants and that stuff to before the game outside the stadium. And then when the game kicked off, it was all about being behind the team and everything like that. But 10 minutes in, you could clearly hear, we want Levy out. We want Levy out, And you're like, come on, guys, that's not going to help anybody. And I know players say, oh, we don't really hear that kind of thing. But there's a tension. You pick up on that kind of tension, don't you? Even if you may not be hearing the exact words that are being sung, there's a tension coming out. And if it's positive, that's great. If it's negative, it's not so good.
Yeah, nine changes puts you behind the 8 ball to begin with. So that I agree on that. I also agree with you, Stu. I think that we didn't see players working to get open. It really did look like a flashback to the tactics of last year. I think we had more back passes in this one match than we had in the previous, 3 matches.
And the quality of passing was dire. The number of times balls were passed directly out of play was nobody's business.
Compounded when players aren't working to make themselves available. So,
but this is, if you look at the average quality, if you could put a number on the quality of a player, right? Let's say you're playing FIFA or whatever, and the average is, you get like average of 80 if it's your first 11. And then you take your second 11, then your average is going to be 60 or something. And that doesn't mean to say those players are useless. But if you take the average of your first 11, your average of your second 11, it's going to be a totally different team and totally different quality. And that doesn't mean those players are bad. They just shouldn't be like, and that's before you get into the fact that key players weren't playing like Bissouma. You can't expect the team to function properly without Bissouma or a proper replacement for Bissouma. Royale in particular, garbage at times. His usage of the ball was awful. Right? If you put him next to Bissouma, as we did against Barca, but Bissouma was playing those balls. He was always available, ticking the ball over, allowing us to play on the front foot. Without him or someone, a viable alternative, So if you drop Bissouma, you've got to play a really strong side to get a decent result at this point until Bentancur's back, in my opinion. I just think that it was just nonsense. It was disappointing to see the quality, but on the other hand, I found it kind of predictable. Although saying that, it's not that I'm not sure. I was suspicious at the start. Let's say I can't say I actually predicted it. If I'm completely honest, right? It's easy to say in retrospect. But I was like, well, I hope that Ange knows something we don't about this, and he didn't.
I think he learned a bit from that game. I think he learned that you can't take it lightly against a Premier League team. He put out a side. I mean, Fulham also made something like 8 changes.
5 changes.
It was less than
Was it 5? I thought it was more.
Yeah.
I thought it was 6. But
okay, so they made a decent number of changes as well. So disrupted their side. But I think their goalkeeper certainly was changed over because that was his first game for quite some time by the sound of it. But certainly there just seemed to be a lack of fluidity, a lack of cohesion amongst the team, and I was disappointed in the players because they just seemed to just chuck everything that we'd been working on right out the window, and that was it. It was like, okay, well, right, some of you have shown today that you're not ready to work like that. And I think the really big disappointing thing for me was the senior players. The senior players in that side should have known better. Davinson Sanchez should have known better. Forster should have known better. Højbjerg should have known better. And all 3 of them were guilty of punts, which lost us possession and, just conceded possession at times where we needed to keep hold of the ball and do something with it.
But the substitution was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because we looked like we kind of went 4-4-2, which almost suggested like Ange was actually playing to hit it long. I didn't really understand. It seemed like maybe the game plan was changed as well.
But that time we started playing it on the ground again. You put together a side that you could actually play it long, and we weren't.
But it's weird that we took off Lo Celso, who wasn't playing that badly, and brought on a striker. I was injured.
Okay. He was injured. Yeah, Ange's been talking. I think it was yesterday, in press conference, and he's saying he's got an issue with his quad. I think it is. So that's why they took him off. He's got a tight quad, and they reckon he'll be okay after the international break. So he's not going to play tomorrow.
But then why not bring on Maddison?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to save that for later. Yeah. But no, I don't think anyone actually thought that was good enough. But the previous games, how happy are we about the previous games? Because I bloody loved it. I have to say, fantastic. Even the Brentford, which didn't go 100% the way we wanted it to, but I thought there was stuff in there that was really, really good and a lot of fun. And you could look at it and you go, yeah, that's actually a side that I really enjoy watching.
I say this. Watching some of the individuals play, Maddison, part of his play is a bit like Gazza at his best, because he drifts past players and his passing is sublime. And Bissouma, he just looks like a player at a different level to everyone else. He really is very, very good indeed.
£100 million player, surely. 150.
Oh, easily. If he'd had more than a year left on his contract at Brighton, they'd be asking for 100 million for him.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. The fact we got him for the amount we did is it's a crime, frankly. But I'm happy to go with
Maddison. I mean, Maddison cost 40 million. How good is that when you compare it with Mason Mount and some of the other midfielders that are being signed by people? And he's like an absolute top player.
It's almost like Levy knows what he's doing.
No, don't be ridiculous. Levy out.
So what was I thinking of? I must have gotten dizzy or something.
Yes.
Thank God Panit isn't on. Panit hates Levy.
Well, if we're going to talk about Levy very quickly, because I think it's been done before, I can understand why there are people who are upset, but this is a guy who's taken this club a very, very long way. I remember when he came in, when Sugar sold up, we were in a bad way under Sugar.
Yeah,
horrible. We weren't playing good football. We were selling all our best players all the time. Anyone that looked like they had any quality, we'll chuck them in at 16 and see if they do, and they didn't. They drowned.
I think the
managers are just
but I think that
manager.
Irving Scholar is a great person to compare with for those of us that are old enough to remember, because Irving Scholar was the kind of chairman that people want right now. If you set aside the sort of crazy money from the Middle East or whatever, Russia, he bet the club on some bad business deals and some bad football deals, or risky football deals, and he almost bankrupted the club. And so Alan Sugar may have been a sort of painful process, but in a manner of speaking, what he did was shore things up and stepped in at a time when the club was struggling financially. But the cautionary tale for those of us who remember is Irving Scholar. Levy is a sound businessman, and that does matter. I'm sorry, it just does.
Yeah.
And he knows how to run the club within its means. So I mean, he's not perfect. No one says he is, but he gets more right than he gets wrong, in my opinion. And some of the things people say, like, why didn't we sign player X at the start of the window? It's just not how football works. Things just deals happen when they can happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I think you have to look at the bigger picture. I think Levy's dream was to create an infrastructure, which he has done. And we are yet to see the absolute benefit of that infrastructure, because we are now paying pretty top dollar for good players. We have done for 2 years now, after the stadium was completed. And I think we've got a manager now who I suspect, we can't guarantee it, but I suspect could take us to very good places. He's certainly playing football that I want to watch, which is what I hope for Spurs. And I think Levy's been there 20 years, and he gets criticism because we haven't won anything. But when you dig foundations, you don't see anything until you start to build the building. And we're now building the building. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be in a position where we can challenge for things.
I also think that, and this question of winning things, like, he's not the manager, he's not the players, right? Mm-hmm. The best thing you can do is to set the team up so it's possible to win something. And maybe one of the biggest criticisms we could make is that it seems like, it's very hard to tell, but it seems like the strategy of not taking domestic cups seriously, at least partly comes from him. And that is something he has to take responsibility for. And that's one of the reasons why Spurs fans are so annoyed. But if you look at our involvement in the Champions League final, right? It's not his fault we didn't win the Champions League final, is it? I mean, what's he supposed to do? Get on the pitch himself? Try pull Sissoko's arm down when he thinks about handballing it. What's he supposed to do?
Never.
I think even though we lost the Champions League final, I've been supporting Spurs since 1962, and that year we were knocked out in the semi-final of the European Cup with some debatable decisions. But I've never seen us get that far before. So under Levy, we've actually got further in international football than we've ever done before. And on top of that, we have won 3 European competitions, which is more than our neighbours have.
Yeah, and an Audi Cup and a Tiger Cup as well. So we shouldn't forget those.
Oh,
I'll tell you what.
I'll
tell you what I want to do. I'll tell you what I want to. You know, all of us, not all of us, but myself and Matt certainly are a little bit further away than someone like Austen. Austen is living in the UK. He's exposed to it on almost daily basis. I kind of like to throw the ball out a little bit further and see what fans who live further away and probably have even less exposure to it than us, Matt, actually said. So, Andy, Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree with him. Levy is primarily a businessman, and he's doing a good job with it. I also agree with some of the discussions that we've had before, that the thought of bringing in oil money or other controversial owners is actually less palatable than anything Levy's done. I mean, we have a beautiful stadium, state of the art, probably up there with the very best in the world. And that's Levy. You can't deny that. That's Levy. He is a good businessman. The F1 track in the new stadium. I mean, these are the things that move you forward without massive splashes of oil money cash. So I agree that the infrastructure is in place for us to really make some improvements in the market 2-3 years from now. And that's on Levy. You got to point to Levy with that and give him the credit that he deserves. And the market value of this team has skyrocketed. I mean, there's a lot of positives that just get ignored. So yeah, you're right. We don't get bombarded with the anti-Levy material over here nearly as much. You have to go hunting for it. And yeah.
I'm sure some people do.
Yes, exactly. Or you just read a post from Puneet. But anyhow, I'm in the pro Levy camp. If nothing else, because the alternatives that are out there that are going to pay that kind of money for our team are not anyone I want to be associated with, and I don't want Spurs associated with them either.
Tend to agree. I always say that ownership of sports teams, more so in the U.S., but tends to be the case in the EPL as well now, is a sliding scale of awfulness. And you can look at ENIC in a number of ways, obviously. Joe Louis, obviously, being a tax escapee, we'll put it nicely, it isn't the best thing in the world, but it's not the worst. It's not anything close to what's going on at Newcastle, for example, or any of the other oil states. Having said that, Levy definitely has made some tactical mistakes over the years, despite all the really good things that he's done as a business person. You think of some major mistakes, like the whole possibly moving into the Olympic Stadium. You think sometimes maybe he needs a PR person he just needs to run everything past as a last second to maybe think, oh, how is this going to look? I did not think about this. Or you think of the Super League, those kinds of things. He really doesn't necessarily have a handle on how those things are going to affect the fans. But obviously the biggest ones that upset us are footballing ones. The Champions League, following the Champions League and not investing in the squad. What was it? Three windows in a row. And like the thing too is that I think everybody has acknowledged he needs to give up some of those footballing decisions to somebody else. Well, the problem with that is he's gone that way previously. The Athletic just had a big post about this being the 10-year anniversary today of having sold Gareth Bale. And it reminded me that we had Franco Baldini as our director of football. And how long did that last? 2 seasons? So maybe he's just not good at picking the right people. Obviously, we're seeing our guy who is now banned from football, Paratici, and he did obviously some good things, but had some character issues. So it's tough to say. I'm kind of with Dave, where it's like I find it hard to think of just getting the guy out without thinking of what comes after that.
Ash, what do you think?
I agree with a lot with Dave and Andy said. I've met him twice, Levy, when they've come here, and he's very short. But you know what? He actually loves Tottenham, and he actually knows probably as much as Austen does about, you know, our history and stuff. So he obviously cares. But as with the two previous gentlemen, he does make tactical mistakes. I think once the new stadium was built, this idea with Mourinho, and I despise and loathe that man. I think he thought, well, we can bear with it, and he'll win something in this first year, and I'll be proved right. And then I think he did the same thing with Conte. Okay, we can bear with it. He's going to do something. We'll get the results. Maybe it's going to be turgid, but we're going to get the results, and the fans will be happy that we hoist a cup. But that didn't work either, you know. So where are we now? What if he leaves Ange with, as I posted on CAD, with Saha and Nelson 2.0? Like, I mean, what if we get nobody? It's like, you've got three really good guys in, I think. What if there is nobody else and he's kind of left him hamstrung, you know? It almost seems like we've gone back to the last minute, you know, penny pinching. Okay, we won't spend that money. Let somebody else get him, you know? It does. There's a fear. I got a squeaky bum time that maybe he hasn't learned, you know?
A lot of times, when that criticism comes up, I look and say, right, okay, so who is there in the market that we missed out on by leaving it late? And there's not often that many people, I'll be honest. I mean, obviously today, Liverpool have signed Gravenberch. It's a player that makes me go, I wish we'd signed him. But where would he fit into our squad? I mean, I'm the spreadsheet guy, so I put together a spreadsheet on, our squad and, where we stand and things like that. But there is no space in our team for a player like that unless we sell a lot of players. We've got a huge number of people who are just going to be sat on the sidelines, not registered for anything, just this season. I mean, if you want, I can take you through it later, but, it's big numbers, honestly, the number of people. We've got spaces in the homegrown section. We've lost one of those spots today because Ben and Johnson will be taking it. But I think we only had, if I pared it down to an 18-man squad, I managed to get it down to an 18-man squad of what I considered essential players. And yeah, there's 3 spots left, I think, for non-homegrown players. And you've got to leave a lot of players out to get there, including people like Perisic and Højbjerg. So
yeah, I think it's really, really difficult to build the squad with the players that we've got. Some of them have to go. And, it's all very well. I mean, I was saying in our last discussion that this will all sort itself out. And to a certain extent it does. But, I mean, we can't have unlimited players because it's not fair on anyone for players to just sort of gather dust unregistered at the club, and it's irresponsible to bring in too many new players. I personally don't think, Ash was saying leaving the manager hamstrung. I don't think he is by this squad. I think that the squad is fine. I mean, I think that we can always see ways to improve, but no one really wants to see Dyer playing in this defense with a high line. But we haven't got that many games. And if it means that he has to be that player for the season as a 4th choice, then so be it. After Davies as well. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem to be any great concern to me. And sometimes it's nice to have a core squad of players that are flexible, can play in different positions. Davies can play in 2 positions. Son can play in 2 positions. There are various other ways that we can be flexible. I just don't see that we have a great problem, and we don't have many games. Ange has seen to that by getting rid of the League Cup. Thanks, Ange. So we have one less reason to worry about having rotation. Perfect. Good job.
The other thing we need to remember is that it's the English transfer window that's closing tonight. Turkey's still got 2 more weeks. Saudi Arabia's still got another week. And I know, we don't have a friendly deal with Saudi Arabia like Chelsea had. Chelsea sold how many players to Saudi Arabia? It's got nothing to do with Michael Emenalo, who used to be employed by Chelsea. I'm absolutely sure. But yeah,
I can't imagine the fees are going to be very high when we're sort of stuck when everyone knows that we have to get rid of a player. I mean, this is we'll take him off your hands for free territory, I think.
It's kind of whether the players want to go there, I think. My understanding is that Sanchez has already turned down a deal to go there. So has Dyer. So, unless they...
Ndombele as well.
And Ndombele as well. There you go. 3 players who maybe not Sanchez, but Ndombele and Dyer need to go. Sanchez has had a bit of an up and down time. Really impressed me pre-season. He did well against Brentford. I thought, he had a couple of little errors, but nothing. He didn't look horrendous, which he has done in previous games, previous seasons. But, Fulham game was kind of just revert back to form almost. I hope we see more of the early season Sanchez than Fulham Sanchez.
Sanchez is like the canary in the coal mine, isn't he?
Yeah.
When things are going wrong, Sanchez shows up very, very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Ash was talking about Conte. Ash was talking about Mourinho. What are the major differences? What has our early season form highlighted as being, what does it tell us about the squad under Conte and Mourinho?
That our intention is to play good football now. And I've enjoyed watching some of the players that I haven't enjoyed watching in the last 2 years, 3 years, play football this year. Because we have actually played some scintillating football at times. It's not complete yet, but 1 or 2 of the players have actually really shown that they can turn around and do things in a different way.
Yeah. This is the one that I really wanted to talk about, isn't it? I think it's a little bit more difficult to say what I was going to say after the Fulham game. So the Fulham game,
ignoring Fulham, we're moving on from Fulham.
That didn't happen. No, I think that it's a good example of why we shouldn't get too carried away about our great start under Ange. But I really wanted to reflect on the things that Conte said in particular. And also, I think Mourinho has to be in the discussion too. But Conte was criticising the squad as a squad that is a long-term project. We can't play particularly well. We have to, play in a contained way. We have to play conservatively. We have to play boring. Mourinho showed that he was fully committed to this sort of boring ball, this sort of, sit back, putting 11 men behind the ball. These managers would have us believe that in order to win games, we had to play anti-football. I think Conte at one point was getting us to play some exciting stuff. The counter press stuff was working. I can't really understand why that went wrong, but I think that a lot of people were very critical of the squad, and I understand that after the Fulham game, many people feel like being critical again. But I've tended to stand up for the squad and say that, if you set them up in the wrong way, if the system's wrong, the players are going to be set up for a fall. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a different kind of error against Fulham as well. But if you play our strongest team, or strongest, at least 50% of our strongest players, and you set them up and train them to play proper football, the Spurs way, we can do stuff. So I think that maybe partly the question is, if I'm being kind to Conte, I'm not inclined to be kind to Conte, but I'm going to try. That he was a poor fit. We know that Mourinho was a poor fit, but the way that he burnt his bridges, Conte, was really unacceptable. But then he was doing it for weeks. He was putting down the squad for weeks and weeks and weeks before he really torched the place. But you could say he was just a poor fit from the start, if I'm being kind. But I think, if I'm being less kind, I think that these two are managerial dinosaurs. I can see Conte slightly disappearing from view a little bit. Mourinho is always going to find a role. Conte is always going to find a role. But, Conte has done great things, and Mourinho as well, with really expensively assembled squads. And they just set them up and they say, I'm going to set you up to contain. Our best players do something spectacular. and that seems to be the game plan for the most part, right? But Ange is showing, and Pochettino showed as well during his time, that if you set the team up right to play properly as a team, you can be really impressive. So, well, hopefully this comment stands the test of time, and Ange will continue to build on the good start that he's had, right? So, but I'm you can already see it though, really, can't you? Just in those first Premier League games, you can already see it's obvious the players can play.
I think we have to take into account that he's only been manager for 4 competitive games.
Well, 3 competitive games.
Oh, you academic, Matthew.
Splitting hairs as always. No, but I totally agree. I mean, it's early days and it's very impressive what he's done.
If we're going to go back to the Conte, I think a lot of people know how I felt about Conte very early on. I don't think I hid that. But there was
Conte by nature,
Tordo, as I call him. There was one game that sticks out in my memory. I'm pretty sure it was Fulham, where we went out and we attacked and we actually played some really good football under him, and I really enjoyed it. But we didn't win the game. We drew the game. We threw it away with some bad decisions or bad choices by the players. And Conte basically came out in the press afterwards and he was like, "Yeah, that's why we don't play like that. We don't try and play football, because it backfires on us." And I'm like, yeah, but you're missing the point. Look how good we were. We got ourselves ahead. We were doing really well. And then a couple of things. If you kind of continue working at it, those things that let us down will disappear. Eventually they'll go, But he was like, no, we're going to go back to doing what I want to do, which is play negative anti-football, as you say.
Seems like the players actually, or certain members maybe among the coaching staff as well, were sort of saying we need to play more attacking football. We need to try and keep the ball more. And he did it as a token effort, again, sort of seemingly hoping that we would fail. Yeah, I remember. It was like, what is this message? What are you trying to convey? You're just trying to use as a platform to criticize people.
I think he never took responsibility for the results of the club. He blamed the players for negative results, and I think absolutely crippled the confidence of the players. And Eric Dyer, for example, was at one stage a very good player, and I think he's destroyed him. And Dyer now it's not a waste of space because he's a committed Spurs man, but he just doesn't perform. And I think Conte absolutely destroyed him as a player.
I'm not sure I totally agree with that, because I think that Dyer's downturn coincided apparently with an injury. And I think that Conte really liked Dyer. I don't remember him particularly hanging him out to dry. I think that Dyer was actually a pretty good player in the Conte system. And I think he could be again in a team that sits back. I just don't think he's the right man for us. I actually don't think he's a bad player. He had a bad sort of 4 to 6 months, but apparently he was carrying an injury.
I am amazed that someone like Everton hasn't come in for him. Amazed. I would have thought, someone like Everton who needs to shore things up at the back, who, could pick up a Premier League player, international, previously, someone who's got leadership qualities. Yeah, he hasn't got the greatest pace, but, that's not really what Everton's game is based on. I'm just amazed it didn't come in. So that's the kind of guy we need in our team, because it is.
If I were Levy, I would have been calling Aston Villa the day that Tyrone Mings was announced with an injury. And I know Emery isn't quite that defensive, but still, you would think that somebody would be in for him.
Well, they had Pau Torres waiting in the wings, just ready to come in. So that's not so much of a surprise that they weren't that interested. But yeah, maybe they'd probably be more interested in someone like Sanchez, I think. So
I wonder if Dyer secretly is in Ange's plans. It's just that he was told not to play him because he's only got a year left on his contract, and we were trying to get him off. We're trying to get some money for him. But if he stays, I mean, we might as well play him, right?
Genuinely, I don't think Ange would take that very well if he was told who he could play and who he couldn't play.
Well, I mean, asked politely, let's say, to maybe, No, I mean, I think that we all know that there are certain players that they're, looking at the exit door. But by the end of the window, if they're no longer looking at the exit door, or the club is no longer trying to sell them, I think he might well surprise us. He's not a bad player. I think he's ill suited to the high line, but I'm sure he can. I'm sure.
I was thinking about this when it was being discussed about Højbjerg possibly leaving today, and I know the idea was to possibly move him on and bring in Gallagher, which is an interesting move, but I don't know if in that case who would have really played the Basuma role when Basuma goes to Africa Cup of Nations in January. So I'm curious if if Dyer does stay, is he a better possibility for that defensive role in midfield than that high line?
I know exactly who Matt is going to call on for this. I can feel it in my bones.
I'm going to say it. Can I say it? Can I say it? Bentancur.
Bentancur. There you go.
Bentancur. He can play in goal if he wants to. Play wherever he likes. No, I'm taking your point seriously, Andy. He was very good when he was a bit younger in this role. I'm not sure he's still got it in him. I think the player will go on around him a little bit too much. Especially I think for Ange, maybe in a different team, but for Ange's team, I think we need a real quality ball carrier passer, and Bentancur is capable. I think there are one or two other players that could also do it. I actually quite like the idea of playing Sarr there, but Ange doesn't seem to agree with me because he hasn't done it at all. So I guess he knows better than I do. But I think Bentancur is a Rolls Royce of a player, as Oz likes to describe him. And I think that I think he could cover pretty well. I mean, I think that it'll be amazing when he plays. Imagine, I'm really looking. Let's hope that Bentancur comes back to how he was. Bentancur, Basuma, and Maddison. It's going to be amazing.
Where do you fit Sarr in then? Because Sarr's been brilliant so far this season. He's been great.
He's no Bentancur.
Well, we'll see how he goes. Obviously, this Fulham game is the first match we've really struggled in. I think, as I said, even during the Brentford game, there were positives there. We are going to have other bad games which go against us. What is key to keeping Ange ball sustainable during a rough patch? Ash, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a tough question because I've been thinking about it. I'm wondering about it, because John Ellis, that John who goes, I think he goes to all the games.
Yeah.
He replied to something I said today, and he said, if we lose against Burnley and don't get any improvements in the transfer window, if it doesn't go any, he said, Ash, I think the toxicity will start coming back. So that was my question, is that there could be things out of Ange's control, not the Fulham game, injuries, bad calls, refereeing decisions. What if we go on a little slump and this positivity that seems to be around Ange, how do we sustain that when we're going through? It has to be inevitable. Every team goes through it. It's going to happen with us. It could happen right now. It could happen just before the international break. What if we have a crappy result against Burnley? Let's hope we don't. What if we do? And then we go in the international break going, the season hasn't started so well. So you got to think that his attitude, how do we sustain it? You got to hope that his attitude, if he really does have this positive attitude, can sort of pull us through the inevitable bad patch. That's about the only thing I can think. Our reserve players are not going to really add much, but the starting 11 are pretty good. So his attitude, I don't know what you guys think, but what happens if we do go through that patch? How do we sustain Ange ball?
I think that Ange has more humility than we've seen. Definitely out of Mourinho and Conte. I think that'll go a long way, admitting that they got it wrong. But I also think that
he didn't, Dave, by the way, and Matt was right. He was disingenuous in the press conference afterwards. So he wasn't being humble. He was being disingenuous, which was surprising. Anyway, please go
I've
on.
seen some clips since then, though, where he seemed to have walked back on that a bit. I think that our attack hasn't started really clicking yet. I think if that continues, we're in trouble because the midfield we've already talked about. We're doing a great job in midfield. The defense is definitely passable or passable plus, but the attack, the final product, is not what it needs to be. I think that could get us into the problem, into the zone where we're talking about where the fans start to turn because we're holding on to the ball a lot. We just aren't putting it in the back of the opposition goal. And we need to figure that out. Richarlison is not getting good service. It's compounded by his frustrations, but he's not getting good service. And a lot of what we talked about in the last chat, how everyone from midfield forward has a chance to score in this offense, and that's what we've been seeing. We've been seeing that actually take place, but our attackers have not really been clicking the way they need to, I think. So
I would say our defense forward. I mean, some of the best chances come for our fullbacks, and centre backs can always get in something from across from a dead ball. But no, I mean, I think I'd be interested to see the stats of the number of shots or chances created, whatever, of the entire team. And I think overall we're getting a good number of chances, and I think they're spread much more evenly than anything I've ever seen, certainly from a Spurs team. And I think that in some respects, the person least likely to score is the centre forward in a way, because although they're in the box, they're in the most crowded zone when you're playing a high press. Clearly that can't last forever, but how many chances have they had? How many chances are other people going to be getting? It doesn't necessarily seem that surprising to me. I think it can be optimized, but yeah, sure, we've only had a few games.
So when Ange was announced, I went and watched the highlight clips of Celtic just to see what are we getting here. And you mentioned the forward. I mean, the forwards aren't, but under Celtic they were getting on the end of the balls. It was a lot of volleys and one-touch shots, but they were being created quickly up the wings and put into the box in an attractive situation, and they were finishing on those. Obviously, we're talking Scottish versus English league. That does matter. They didn't do so well in Europe, but to say that they don't feed the forwards in his system, I think ideally they do. I think the inverted fullbacks, I mean, they're gonna get their shots. I think that's part of the design as well, and we saw that as well at I can't remember who it is that they had, but didn't they have some guy who they sold for quite a pretty penny, who was one of their fullbacks? I don't remember the name now, but I thought they did pretty well on him. So I think that it's designed to give them chances with them pushing so far forward. But if we're gonna have one of those rough spots, and are the fans gonna turn or not, it's gonna be because there's no offensive product. Obviously, I mean, we're losing, so there's no goals being scored in this scenario. But I think the thing that'll really sour people is just holding on to possession, doing great in the midfield isn't enough. We need some serious attacking power. And if we're going to hold tight in those rough patches and keep the fans on board, I think it's going to be because they figured out the offense a bit more, and it feels like they've got some purpose in the attack. Sometimes it just doesn't feel like it. They're just picking up what's left over and doing okay with it. I mean, look at Sarr, but it should be Richie. Richie should be involved more. Son should be involved more.
But I think that our game plan, or maybe the Celtic success, was built on picking up goals from defensive errors. And you're not going to get that many defensive errors in the Premier League. So, I mean, if defenses are set, which they typically are, so unless we're going to start playing better on the turnovers, and maybe that's going to be part of the answer, so that we can create opportunities from our strikers where the defense isn't well set. Maybe this is where the press comes in, right? Where we sort of the counter press and the turnover defenses aren't well positioned. I mean, then we need to get Richie on the ball quickly. And that's probably what's part of what's going to work better. But I think that from the start of the season, going back to the question Ash was posing, how are we going to deal with a rough patch? I think part of it has already been addressed in the sense that Fulham aside, the goodwill that Ange has generated, we were hoping that he would have time to build that goodwill. I don't think any of us, even in our optimistic moments, were thinking that he would build that goodwill within 3 games. But I think that the fans are already on board. As long as we go back to doing the same kind of thing, and the Fulham debacle becomes a distant memory, I think that whatever bad form we have, as long as we're trying to play attacking football, and Ange is clearly trying to do that, I think we'll be fine. I think that probably we'll hear Levy out, but apart from that, I think Ange will be fine.
I found this. I found this interesting graphic, which I'll chuck up on the screen now for you. So this is a comparison of Ange's first game, which was not our best game against Brentford. We did have some struggles, but the differences between that and the average of everything last season. You just look at that and you go, yeah, isn't that more of what we want to see? And I think the thing with Ange Ball and what's going to keep it going is it'll keep going because Ange doesn't do anything else. We'll know if we have to get rid of him, because the team won't be listening to him and they won't be doing Ange Ball. If the team on a regular basis is not playing the way that he wants, and we know exactly how he wants them to play, there's not going to be any question that he's lost the dressing room. And at that point, you've got to make a change. And hopefully that doesn't happen for a very long time. But I mean, those numbers to me are extremely, extremely encouraging.
I think we've got to take into account that when he started with Celtic, he actually struggled for a little while. They played the right way, but he actually had bad results. And it took a while for him to establish his method of football on the team, so they were playing it naturally. We've only had 4 games, one of which was Fulham. And I think we've been optimistic because the result so far has been good. But I still think it's going to take him a little while to get us established to playing the way he wants, and to actually get it so that we believe that we're playing football in the way he wants. So I think until we've played 10 or 12 games, we're not really going to see the optimum Ange Ball football.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything they'd like to say on this?
Well, just on your graphic, I mean, that was an away game as well. So comparing, that makes it even more impressive, doesn't it? Totally controlling a game in a way that we didn't on average last season, home and away averaged. It's impressive.
Yeah, must give credit to Sky Sports for that, because that came from them. So yeah, it's in the Reddit. It's in the Ange Ball Reddit. So okay, the other thing that I thought we could take a very quick look through, because I'm aware of the time. It's getting a little bit late. Been a day. But let's have a very quick look. At this. Here we go. This is our 25-man. Well, my 25-man squad spreadsheet. So here we go. We've got all the players that are officially first-team players. The ones that have left and no longer in here, I've taken them out. And over here, we've got people end of contract, EOC, and I've got down whether they're homegrown or not, and I've got a few little notes here. So basically, my 25-man squad, or it's actually, I believe, an 18-man squad, is Vicario, Forster, Romero. I think we need to add a third. You have to have 3 goalkeepers, I believe, in. So we pretty much got to chuck in Alfie Whiteman or Brandon Austen. Which one?
It'd be fun to see Romero step in.
Or Bentancur. I don't
know. I've seen Alfie Whiteman play a few times. I think he's actually quite good.
He's very injured, though.
Is he very injured?
He did his ankle. Wasn't it Whiteman?
Austen. No, I think it was Austen who was injured.
Is it? Oh.
Okay, well, let's chuck. Austin's played more in pre-season.
I've had 2 hip replacements, if that's what you're talking about.
Well, there you go.
I think it was
Alfie Whiteman underwent surgery in the start of August.
Okay. So he's probably out for a little while. So yeah, I've got those 3 goalkeepers. Obviously, our main 2 centre backs, Romero and Van der Ven. Davinson Sanchez made it into my team. Ben Davis is there because he gives us flexibility, covers left back, covers left centre back. Porro and Royale also in there as well. Then we've got Skip Bentancur, who is due back November, I believe. Bissouma, Madison, Lo Celso, Heung-min Son, Manor Solomon, Dejan Kulusevski, Brennan Johnson, who's now added. He's not under 21, so he needs to be basically in that list. And Richarlison. And then you've got Ashley Phillips, Destiny Udogi, Papi Matsar, and Alejo Veliz, who apparently we're not going to see for the first half of the season anyway. They don't need to be registered because they're too young, effectively. They're under 21. So
you haven't got Brian Hill on that list.
No, Brian Hill didn't make it to my list because he's injured and apparently not wanted. So I've been pretty tough. There's Højbjerg's not on there.
He's just bought a house that he's staying in for 2 years in North London.
He can afford to rent it out, I'm sure.
but I mean, you know, he's going to be in the club, right? So. I mean, remind me. I always get confused about this. Is your little table there of 25? So the 25-man squad is the limit, right? Well, there's this complicated thing that I keep forgetting, where
19 in there now. 19 right. Over 21. So we've got 6 spaces, but only 2 of those spaces can be taken up by 2 of those spaces have to be taken up by homegrown players, and then the rest can go to non-homegrown. So there's only 3 spots left in non-homegrown.
Well, Brian Hill's going to be in there, right? I mean, players like this, whether we want them or not, they're Spurs players. He's going to be a Spurs player if he can't be sold, at least until January or loaned.
Okay.
So who is just not involved at all in your list? Sessegnon? Højbjerg?
Sessegnon's injured, and he's not due back anytime soon. Højbjerg's not. Obviously, there are players we don't need in there. So I said Ashley Phillips, Destiny, they're not in there. Who else haven't we got? So at the moment, Lloris, Whiteman, and Ndombele got nowhere near, trust me. Højbjerg, and Ndombele. Then we've got Sar's too young, Sessegnon, Perisic, I've left out.
Apparently, there's a rumor that Lloris might go to Newcastle.
Already washed.
Oh, has it been? Okay. Forget that.
Okay.
By the Newcastle correspondent, apparently.
Okay, fair enough. But I think the likes of Højbjerg is another one, right? I mean, he's clearly a first-team squad player. If he doesn't get sold, he's going to be in the squad. Dembele as well, maybe, right? I mean, what are we going to do with these players? This is part of the problem, isn't it?
Well, I think Dembele's going to go to Italy by the sound of it today. So
okay, fair
that's one of those late moves. But okay, let's check Perisic in as well because he's played a fair bit.
Has to be in. Yeah.
So, I mean, that gives us, what's that, 21 players now? 22 players. So, and we've only got 1 spot. No, we're at our limit, I think, basically.
Stu, I think the number is 17 non-homegrown players. How many do we have in that list there?
So in our non-homegrown players, we have 16. So we can fit 1 more player in.
1 more player in,
yeah. I think Højbjerg is the obvious candidate if nothing else happens.
Well, Højbjerg's in there now. I've put him in. I've added him to the list for you.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
So that's still 16, Stu?
So hang on, let me see. We've got 16 non-homegrown players.
Right.
And that includes Gil. That includes Højbjerg. And anyone else we just discussed. And of course, Perisic.
And you're saying that we still have room for 1 more homegrown as well?
1 more non-homegrown and 2 homegrown.
2 homegrown.
Yeah. Hold on, Brennan is Welsh. He's got to go in there.
No, he's association trained because he was brought up in Nottingham.
I don't know if that's true.
It's true.
Confirmed.
So, so Brennan goes under the homegrown list.
Hope so. So 1 more. We can fit in 1 more then.
We can fit in 1 more non-homegrown.
Right.
I mean, that could end up being Dyer unless something happens.
Yeah, because Dyer counts as non-homegrown.
That's right.
Which is ludicrous.
Ludicrous.
I believe he counts as homegrown if it's if we're playing in Europe.
Right.
But Eric Dyer does not count as homegrown. No, there you go. But again, there was that 1 space we could fit him in. I mean, we talk like we're the ones who are making the choices here, but we all know we're not. But yeah.
So are there any? So have you for all the homegrown players? They all all the potential homegrown players are in the squad already? So the ones that are on our books, are they already in your squad, or are there any we're missing?
Well, no,
Sessegnon, I guess.
Whiteman isn't. Let's see if anyone else.
Sessegnon?
Sessegnon isn't.
Right.
And that's about it. So there's
Has
only those
Divine
two.
gone out on loan?
Yeah.
Yes. And
Who?
Scott's gone out on loan.
Who? Austen? Who?
Alfie Divine.
Fine, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess there's some method in the madness here, right? Because I think we've basically just filled out the squad. Even if you don't like it, you put in Dyer, you put in Sessegnon, you put in Whiteman, and you're done basically. And maybe this is part of the reason why we're not signing anyone.
Yeah. Okay. Let's add Dyer to the list.
I mean, we may like it or not, right? I mean, if you know.
So that's our 17 non-homegrown, and we got 6. So we've still got 2 homegrown spots left, which you could, of course, use on Alfie Whiteman and Sessegnon if you wanted. So yeah, we are right on the limit, but there are still going to be players that are missing out. So I mean, if you want to, go down into the under 21s, there's a 22-year-old player in there at the moment who is not going to get a taste of the first team by the sound of it. There's a reason why Harvey White's going to be leaving the club today by the sound of it, because he can't make it onto the team. He's too old to make it as an under 21. He's not going to fit in as a homegrown player.
He's a good player as well.
He's a good player.
As is Niall John.
But Niall John is young enough to come in and just go under 21 player. Okay. So same as Iago Santiago, who I think is, a player that we should definitely be looking at to make some use of in the first team.
Did you see the 2 goals that he scored against Newcastle that I posted yesterday?
Yeah, I watched the match.
All right then. That goal where he dribbled through and went around the keeper was absolutely superb.
Mm-hmm. No, he's a quality player. Quality player. Yeah.
Mr. Pierre is vaping for a scientist. I'm shocked.
Let's have a look, see if anything else has happened. Breaking news. Liverpool complete Gravenberch signing. PSG agrees 76.4 million deal with Eintracht for Muani. Nothing more going on at Spurs by the sound of it. So what do we think is going on with the Ansu Fati deal? Why do we think that fell apart? My thoughts are that there was no option to buy, so we said no, we're not doing it.
Yeah. I also think De Zerbi carries a lot of weight in terms of attractiveness to players from the continent.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing some great football, and there's some players in there you look and you go, yeah, I could definitely want him at Spurs. I mean, Mitoma is playing at core. Yeah. If the day that Son leaves, you'd be like, yeah, can we spend big on Mitoma, please? Because it's definitely a player I'd like to see in. And Evan Ferguson, if it'd been my choice, I'd have taken every single penny of the Harry Kane money and just go, right, is that enough? Tell me that's enough, because we want that Ferguson guy, because he's a beast, that guy.
He's very, very good.
Yeah. Anyone else before we close this down and say goodbye, and then we can talk about
Matt's
it
got
later.
to go by the look of it, so
well, I think that's probably a good time for us all to say goodnight anyway. Thank you, everyone. It's been a long one. It's been a good one. As always, we'll be putting this up. If you've enjoyed this video on YouTube, please give us a like, subscribe. We'll be putting some shorts up as well to get the little bits. They've been doing pretty well, actually. So we'll see how they go. But thanks, everyone, for joining us. And come on, you Spurs.
Great stuff, Stu. Thanks very much. Thanks, Matt.